Hey guys. Hi. How are you doing? Let's see. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Um okay, so God is so good. Like, let me tell y'all. I was just thinking about something today because, I told you last couple videos, I heard him say the manna is going to cease, and then you're going to eat of the produce of the land, and somebody that the he gave me the word through the acts that the people around me were doing, right? Like, first, I had been living off of the substance from you guys all winter, and then when that started to dry up, the Lord was like, the manna is ceasing. And I was like, what do you mean, Lord? And I really tried not to figure it out. And then I told you I got the vegetables, and then the Lord was like, now you're going to eat of the produce of the land, right? And I was like, oh, cool. Like, so in this whole process of New York, because I learned so many lessons in LA, I had the biggest lesson I think I've learned this time around is not to presume anything that the Lord means, right? So when he speaks something, try really hard not to presume how he's going to work that thing out, but he always works it out, right? And so I have like determined in my heart a while ago not to presume anything anymore from the Lord. Just like, okay, he says it, I believe it, whatever it looks like, instead of, I used to always try to, my wheels would be turning like trying to figure out what he meant, how it's going to come through, how it's going to work, but it always works. And it's so much cooler the way he does it than the way I have it figured out in my head. So anyway, like this past week, all my bills are due in the same week. So like there's one week of the month where I am super stressed out, where I'm like, okay, where, because I never know where it's coming from anyway. It just comes, right? And so this week, I knew, like, I was down to one faithful supporter, you know what I mean? And I was like, that's not going to be enough to cover what I have going on. And and the Lord had given me the word, like, you're going to eat the produce of the land, so I knew he was shifting me into getting resources here, and I didn't know how he was going to do it. And then I met my neighbors, and they were all bringing me food and bringing me stuff. And then I told you about my one neighbor, and I was helping him out while his car was broke down last week, and I was giving him rides and da 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 da. Anyway, by the end of the week, somehow, some way, all my bills got paid. Everything was taken care of. And it was like down to the penny of like everything I needed was between the food and my cell phone and my car insurance and what, whatever bill I have. I can live pretty cheap, but still, I mean, it still takes money, and so like down to the gas in my car, like down to the penny of what I needed this week, it all came from the land. It came from things around me. And I was like so blown away at how God did it, And I was just like thinking, like, yes, like, I don't know what he's doing. He just said it and he'll do it, And I love getting to that place of like fully just surrendering even my presumptions to the Lord, because I just remember, going through LA and having it all worked up in my mind of how and what and how he was going to do it, and anticipating, and then and being completely destroyed because what he did was the opposite of what I had worked up in my mind, although everything he did was exactly what he said he would do, every bit of it, but it just didn't happen the way I thought it would. And so um and so this week I was uh well, yesterday and today I've had some downtime because I've been really busy this week. And so I was just watching, you go on the internet to look at stuff. I was just catching up on stuff, and then I think I went on TikTok or something, and I was just watching reel after reel after reel of all these people, and they're talking about end times prophecies and things like that, and they were all like, every single one of them had a different like point of view, eschatology of how things were going to work out. Jesus is coming back here soon, and he's coming back, and we're gonna get raptured next week, and every single person had a different a different timeline of events, and I just started laughing so hard because it just hit me like how much we presume the word of God. Like all of us, we all do it, and it's just more and more and more in this world. And presumption will make an ass out of you because, especially these date setters, these date setting people, I don't understand it. It's like, you think, like, people have been saying Jesus is coming back soon for 2,000 years, and now you got it down, narrowed down to the day, you know, it's just, it cracks me up, but I do believe that things are going to happen soon, quickly, right? Time is speeding up, things are progressing, where it, the time is short, and it's getting shorter. It feels like the days are just flying by, right? Months are just passing us by. And so yes, I do believe that things are, headed in that direction swiftly, but it just, like, it's just funny because nothing new under the sun, right? People have been doing this since, like, forever. And then today I opened up my Bible right to the story of the road to Emmaus, and Jesus has already resurrected, and he's talking to these depressed disciples who are walking down the road after his crucifixion, and they're so sad, and he's like, what kind of conversation is that you're having, and he's like in a different body, and they don't recognize him. And so he's just like asking him all these questions, like, they're like, what, you don't know, like, where have you been, hiding under a rock, and then and so they tell him all this stuff, and then he says, oh, foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. And so he had to break it down for him, explain it to him, because he calls them foolish ones. Like, I love that, because that's what we are. We're foolish. Like we have a piece of the puzzle. We see through a glass dimly, and so we all have a piece, but nobody has the whole picture figured out. Some of us have bigger pieces, but and that's only by the grace of God that he's shown things to certain people, and they have the wisdom to be able to elaborate and expound on it, but I don't think there's one Bible teacher out there that I could say, oh, I think they have it all figured out. There's so much to it, there's so much to it. And this is on the macrocosm, but even on the microcosm, God will speak a word to your heart, and you will, like, think that you got that thing nailed down, and you're like, oh, this is how he's going to do it. God said this, God said. And it's like, yeah, he did say that, but that's not how he's going to do it, like, and looking back, you'll be able to, like, figure out, yes, like, he did everything that he said he would do, but, like, it's never, hardly ever the way we think it's going to happen. And so especially in the church today, there's just this, I don't know, like, I feel like, people read their Bibles, and they, all of a sudden they get a little bit of insight. Now they're on TikTok, like, with whole new theologies that Jesus came back in 70 AD and we missed the millennial reign of Christ somehow, like crazy, I call it TikTok theology, where people don't really spend just enough time in the Word of God to be dangerous to other people. And so I think that, like, we do a disservice, when especially, like, I heard something the other day, like, when people are talking about end times, that's how a lot of cults revolve around end times theology. And that's how William Branham, he told everybody, oh yeah, we're the revealed sons and daughters of God, right? But the revealed sons and daughters, sorry, hold on, it's a big truck. The revealed sons and daughters haven't even been revealed yet. They haven't been sealed yet, so how can you possibly say that you are one of them? It hasn't happened. So how can you say that that's you? You can't. You're going to be really embarrassed. He's going to say, oh, you foolish one, let me expound the scriptures to you when he sees you. People, there's so many examples of this. I saw something on TikTok yesterday. It was about, it was the Black Hebrew Nation people again, and the whole guy is going on a rant of how, the Africans in America have been in bondage for 400 years, and and it's like, no, you haven't. You've been free for quite a while. And so, like, but it's like these twisting of scriptures to make it fit a doctrine, right? And so people with a little bit of knowledge can be super dangerous to other people, because now this guy's on TikTok preaching this whole racially motivated, you know, erroneous doctrine, and he's going to lead other people with the same victim spirit off a cliff, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to be super careful about what we preach, how we preach it, like, to handle the holy things of God. Like, it takes some discipline and some time in the secret place, permission from the Lord. You know, how many kings in the Old Testament were doing things that they weren't supposed to do because they didn't have the authority? Here's that one king that went into the temple to burn incense. He was a good king, but in his later days, he got prideful and went into the temple because he thought he was a king, so he could go in there and burn incense to the Lord. And he got struck down with leprosy for the rest of his life, because, yeah, you're a king, but you don't have the authority to touch these things. This is not your job, you know? And it's, a lot of it is about staying in our own lane. What piece of the pie did the Lord give you, and how are you going to preach it and not lead other people off of a cliff by saying that you're already sealed, you're already a sealed son or daughter of God? It hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened. So how can you tell people that they're the chosen 144,000 when it hasn't happened yet? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, is God says, you didn't choose me, I chose you. You know what I mean? So, like, he chooses, and then, you know, he brings it to pass in his timing. And that's the other part of walking by faith, and the prophecies of God and the promises of God. You know, it's always his timing. Everything is on God's timetable, not our own. We may want it, we may anticipate it. Sometimes I hear the Lord speak, and I'm like, man, this is going to happen tomorrow. I thought when I came to New York, I'm like, oh, he's going to open a door right up. Like, I don't know why I always think his timetable is so much quicker than mine. And then yet he lets me sit in my car for 6 months, like, just by myself. Like, okay. You know what I mean? But as soon as last week, when he gave me the word to, like, you know, that things were shifting and to come out of my cocoon, boom, I start meeting all these people and now have a busy, active life again. And it was just, I was waiting on the word from God. You know, just because he says something doesn't mean it's going to happen whenever we think it should happen or is going to happen. But because the Lord speaks, and when he speaks, his words have power, you get that anticipation of, like, oh, he means immediately. And no, I mean, it might be immediately to him, but his watch is a lot bigger than ours. You know what I mean? So he's moving on a different timetable than we are. And so that's where our patience and our perseverance comes from. Like 2 Peter says, the testing of our faith is hold on, I just had it. Right here. It says that in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen, you love, though you do not now see him, yet believing, you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory. And so, like, that faith, the word comes and it feels immediate. It feels like, yes, God's going to move right now, you know, because the word is so powerful, you know, and so you move with that expectation, but then the testing of your faith, the longevity of the trial, and it doesn't happen on your timetable, it happens on his, you know, but it will come to pass, you know. But in the meantime, that fire is testing your faith so that it can be more precious than gold. And so we have to have the furnace to be tried by fire. You can't be tried by fire. Your faith cannot be perfected without the fire. And so we have to be thrown into a furnace of affliction, a furnace of testing, a furnace of, you know, coming to terms, hanging on the word of God for dear life and believing him at his word and losing all of our presumptions that would embarrass us so that he can work the way he wants to and not the way we have it figured out in our mind, because the way he's going to work it out is going to be so much more glorious than the way we have it figured out. There's just so much now, and I'm getting more and more like off of social media. Yesterday it was like the first time I'd even been on TikTok in a while. And so like I'm just so much more cautious of who I listen to these days, and much more reserved on, you know, who's preaching what, and what type of sermons I'll listen to. I think I've got it down to like two churches that I even listen to, and one girl that I've been following for years who shares prophetic dreams. And so and that's because she helps me interpret my own dreams by watching hers, so I'm learning something from her. But, I just feel like now's the time to really focus on the Lord and what God is saying. Try not to presume what he's going to say, because I promise you it's going to be much more glorious than the way we have it figured out, and a lot of times when we listen to people, especially the TikTok theologians, we get sucked into some type of racist cult, or, what is that, the preterism, that's really big on TikTok now, where Jesus came back in 70 AD, and I guess nobody got the memo. I guess we all just missed that, and it's just stuff that's easily disproved by the Bible. If you spent any amount of time in the Bible, you would know that's not true, but these people don't actually read their Bible. They are, who knows the source of where they're coming from, because I have many theories that not only are people teaching bad doctrine in ignorance, but I believe that many people are doing it in full awareness of what they're doing, and they're like undercover witches and warlocks that are going in to deceive, like intentional deception. And so we have to just guard our hearts, guard our minds, guard our ear gates from all the pollution in the world, and get back into the Word of God. And so, that's the best thing that's the best thing that any of us can do. But I just want to encourage you, if God does give you a word, hang on to it, write it down, but don't try to figure it out. Like, don't try to like work it out in your mind how he's going to do it, because like even this week when the Lord came through for me, he came through for me in like 5-10 different ways I'd never even saw coming, right down to the penny. And I was just so grateful that I didn't try to figure it out, because had I tried to figure out how I was going to do it, I would have either one, been worrying myself to death, or two, I would have messed it up somehow, because it worked out beautifully just the way he organized it. And so I didn't have to like do anything. I just had to like receive and be and rejoice and be grateful when it happened. So we never know like how it's going to happen. We just know that if he said it, it will, right? And it's just like, don't be like the guys on the road to Emmaus, you foolish ones, and just stay in the word, and just guard your hearts, guard your minds. I love you guys. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.